Namaskar, sir. Over the last 3 years, I was twice in the cremation ground. I was conducting the funeral of my mother and then my father after 2 years. So during that time, the gravity of the immortality of the soul and everything was definitely there. And these verses and your teachings, they gave me a different outlook. I did not continue to look at the concept as my father or my mother are immortal in the soul form. Now the conception changed. But as time has passed, there are two things that I see in my day-to-day life. Those of us who continue living, parts who are members of the family, we feel a very intense sense of everything being very mundane and very strong sense of apathy, indifference towards things. Um, and I also feel it in my work, even though I changed my line of work, try to align it more with uh, a good work or right work. It's in the field of disaster resilient infrastructure these days. But I'm not able to charge the work itself with a very strong sense of purpose. So that's one, and I seek psychotherapy also. But there, they treat it as a very normal thing in the aftermath of bereavement. So they're like, this is very natural. This happens to most of us. And the second thing was, as I pay more attention to your teachings, I also feel that in day-to-day dealings, especially in work, in the outside world, we have to challenge our learned ways of dealing with things. And there, a lot of disruptions start coming, and it seems like if we are disturbing the patterns too much, or lessons that we learned about what the right personality should be, what is considered impressive, effective, efficient, all those things. So is this also expected on this path?
Please see, we said that the way you want to know the fact of the world is by observing things as they are. And whenever it would happen that the fact would expose itself, announce itself, hit you, it would be an instance of disruption of assumption. Whenever facts meet assumptions, it is the assumption that stands to face disruption. Not death is a very stark fact. It disturbs us exactly because it challenges the assumption on which we base our day-to-day life. We live, we act in forgetfulness of death. The ego wants to think that it is indestructible, that it is the self. As we say, Aham wants to believe that it is Atma. And Atma does not die. Therefore, the ego wants to live in forgetfulness of death. That's how we conduct our day-to-day routine, assuming ourselves to be the truth and therefore assuming ourselves to be immortal. Faced with the fact of death, that assumption is shattered. So, there can be two options then. Behave as if the assumption still stands unhurt. As if you have seen nothing, and carry on with life as it always has been. Or you could see that death, grief, bereavement, they have come as fact checks, as teachers, to tell you that you have been living in some gross, unfounded belief, as we all do. Most people want to turn back to normalcy as soon as possible after a brief period of bereavement. And that's what they go to psychotherapy for. They say, we want to get back to normal. That's like saying we want to quickly forget the hint of the truth that came to us. Can you help us go back to our dreams, to our stupor, to our inebriated normal consciousness? And that's what is called, as we said, as normalcy. You can choose to reclaim your normalcy, or you can choose truth. Death came to tell that whatsoever we have founded our lives on is very fragile. Now we can accept the lesson or just discard it. It depends on us. Your normal work, your relationships, your worldview, all these will obviously appear hollow after you are struck with the fragility of everything. To me, that's an opportunity to move into something else, something higher. After a lesson has been taught, an expensive lesson, why would one not want to use the lesson? Why would one want to continue as the uneducated student one previously was? Sorrow comes to teach. Losses are suffered so that we may see that whatever we cling to can be lost very easily. In Mahabharata, there is the instance of the Yudhishthir Yaksh Samvad. So the Yaksh is a mythical creature. And it is said that when the Pandavas were passing through the period of exile in the forest, once they went to fetch some water, one after the other, and none of them returned. So Yudhishthir went after them and found all of them lying unconscious by a water body, a lake. And then the guardian of the lake, he said, you either answer all my questions or you too will drop dead like your brothers. So Yudhishthir said, fine. A beautiful set of questions. We all deserve to read them. One of the questions is, what is the most intriguing thing about humanity? That's a Yaksha Prashna. And Yudhishthir responds that men encounter death and yet carry on as if they have seen nothing. They know they will die and yet they behave as if they are immortal. So we could continue to behave as if we are immortal. The admission of vulnerability does not lie in mere words. If you really know something, it has to show up in your actions, thoughts, deeds. Only then can you claim that you really know something. Right? We want to live as the body and yet we want to be immortal. Now this is a gulf that can't be bridged. On one hand, we have a great stake and a great temptation in behaving as the body. On the other hand, even as we want to live as the body, we want to be deathless. These two cannot go together. Death comes to tell that if you will live as the body, this is what you will end as. Ashes. Do you like that? If you like that, carry on with your usual business. If you do not like that, then you need to ascend your life to a higher dimension. It's an incongruent mass, the ego. Split by inner contradictions. Wants to proclaim to everybody and itself, I am immortal. And yet, every day it encounters proofs of its mortality. So it is continuously afraid. Proclaims, I am afraid of nobody. Because I am truth itself, I am Atma. What can happen to me? And yet everything it does, every little piece of fact, proves to it that you are extremely vulnerable, totally fragile. Your life is that of a clamoring mosquito. Pat, gone. And that bundle of contradictions is what the life of the average human being is. Claiming immortality, yet afraid of mortality. So striving to be immortal in all kinds of distorted ways possible. Death comes to educate us. Let's learn the lesson. One thing I can kind of assure you of, it will be very difficult for you to return to your old ways. It requires a very deep kind of dishonesty to unsee after you have seen. To unrealize after you have realized. If you have seen something, realized something, now you are condemned to, burdened to live what you have realized. You cannot be the same ignorant mind again. Something has been seen. Maybe you are enjoying the bowl of soup till now. Once you have seen the fly in it, you may still continue to sip. But can you continue to enjoy? It will require, as we said, deep-seated dishonesty and a very perverted sense of taste to still enjoy the soup. You won't be able to. So you better get yourself a fresh bowl. Great changes have known to come after one has witnessed death. There would have been no Buddhism in the world had the young Siddharth not chanced upon death one day. Death is a liberator. Not so much to the one who has died, but to the one who is still alive. Yes.
So if I may add just two more thoughts. One came much before this session about the contradiction. I think Pitri Paksh were going on, and a lot of effort was being made by some family members about for the liberation of the departed, souls. And at that time, I had written in one of my reflections that while people were alive, there was no talk of mukti, and not even a single discussion ever happened. The only mukti that was ever imagined was death. But after the death has happened, some mukti is being talked about, for which crows will come, and pandits have to be fed, and visits to Gaya are required. That was the first contradiction. But the second one, on which I would definitely like your teachings on, was or is the last sentence that you said, because it constantly feels that death is a liberation to those who have died. It feels like that. Because my mother died at 55, 56 and struggled a lot with very deep mental health issues all her life. And my father was a very hard worker and everything, and died at 64, right after retirement. So it feels as if they have been liberated while we are condemned to go on living. While what you have said is the exact opposite. So why does that feeling not arise? Why does it feel like, why should it not come to all of us?
Because liberation is not an absence of consciousness. Liberation is the joy of consciousness. Liberation is not consciousness bludgeoned into coma. Liberation is the effervescence of consciousness. What joy is possible to the dead? So it is not possible that liberation comes through death. No. If you are gone, what joy is there to you? In fact, all the possibility of joy has also gone. Therefore, Vedanta is unique in talking about Videha Mukti and Jivan Mukti and saying Jivan Mukti is the real thing. Jivan Mukti. When we talk of Mukti, it has to be specifically Jivan Mukti. Liberation while alive as the body. The body is there, and the joy of knowing that you are not the body is there. If the body is no more there, Where is the joy of knowing that you are not the body? If the toy is gone, what joy is there in witnessing it? Organized religion is just an elaborate conspiracy to keep you away from mukti. And you put it very nicely. Nobody talks of mukti when they are alive. Now after they are gone, their kith and kin are supposed to be worried about their mukti, which is all quite nonsensical. Once you are gone, the opportunity is gone. There is no liberation for the dead. No liberation at all for the dead. And that is why the opportunity called life is so precious. Liberation is not for the true self, Atma. Is there liberation for Atma? And there is no ego sans the body. You very well know when the ego is born. When the child gains consciousness. Liberation is not for Atma. Liberation is only for the ego. And the ego exists only with the body. Therefore, liberation is possible only when you are bodied. There is nothing called a disembodied ego. But organized religion has come up with this ugly hoax, the disembodied ego, which it calls as the Jivatma. Vedanta totally dismisses that, the disembodied self. There is nothing called the disembodied self, or ghosts, or Jivatma, or wandering soul, or any other nonsense of that kind. Will you please remember that Vedanta arises out of deep compassion for the living being. Vedanta is not about compassion for ghosts. No rishi is coming and saying, I need to liberate ghosts. For that you can refer to the Pandits of organized religion. They are interested in liberating ghosts. Vedanta is about living, eating, breathing, talking, walking human beings. Vedanta is about us, not the bhoot prets. Otherwise the rishis would have been talking all the time to the ghosts. Upanishad would mean the rishi talking to ghosts, because the ghosts are to be liberated. Krishna should have been addressing ghosts. Who is being addressed in Vedanta? Give me one instance where a dead one is being addressed. Who is being addressed? Somebody alive. Because we are the ones who suffer. Ghosts don't suffer. Even if they suffer, their suffering is the imaginative outcome of our suffering. The more we suffer, the more we imagine suffering ghosts also. And if you look at ghost stories, their sufferings are mirror reflections of our suffering. So some male ghost has lost a female ghost. And he is absolutely heartbroken. That looks more like a human story, no? That is a human story imposed upon the ghost. Or the ghost is envious. Or the ghost wants to extort some money. Or the ghost wants to have some wicked fun by entering somebody's body. No, these are things that we do. You find a vacant plot and you occupy it. So you have concocted a similar story, saying the ghost found a vacant body and entered it. The rishis were talking to living people, not souls. Ever found a sermon being addressed even to a dead body, let alone a ghost? That a fellow is lying dead, or that the fellow is sleeping, or that the fellow is unconscious and he is being sermoned? Any such instance? No such instance. In fact, the listener has to be fully attentive. Only then the seer would speak. Which means you need a living, attentive consciousness. Sitting in front as a listener or a student. The concept of liberation has to be clarified. No liberation after death. No. No bondage after death. No liberation before birth. No bondage before birth. Nothing before birth. Nothing after death. Because all sorrow is there only as you are alive. Is there sorrow before your birth? No, sir. Is there sorrow after your death? No, sir. All the hodgepodge and the drama is while when we are alive. Therefore, all the teachings are addressed to living people. Sri Krishna is not choosing to talk to Arjun's father, the diseased father. Is he? Once someone is gone, it's time to turn to the welfare of those who are still alive. No welfare is possible of the one who is gone now. Gone means gone. The window is closed. However, the window is still open in the form of several other people who are still alive. Take care of them. That's empathy. That's genuine compassion. In fact, the more you try to take care of the departed ones, in some way, the more cruel you are. It's like feeding a dead one at the cost of starving the living ones. Concentrate on the living ones. They are the ones who can still be uplifted or saved or liberated. In India, one of the reasons behind the high rate of suicides in rural areas is this. The prevalence of expensive religious customs, especially the customs spanning 13 days after death. Now, you can somehow cut corners when it comes to customs on other occasions. But a great scare grips you when it comes to the departed soul. And the priest is there to drill the fear deep down. He will say, if you do not spend so much money, if you do not gift so many items, if you do not feed so many Brahmins, then your departed father will burn in hell. Now this is something no son, no daughter, no wife, no family member can tolerate. So the poor people actually borrow for the sake of these rituals. And then the loan cannot be repaid because microfinancing is very expensive still in rural India. People borrow from local money lenders at high monthly rates of interest. And then one death becomes the reason for a couple of suicides within next 2-3 years. Why? Because people were trying to ingratiate a departed soul. And it is not something that halts just after 13 days. The entire cycle of rituals continues. Initially month after month, and then year after year. You even have to make expensive journeys. How will a poor man afford all that? So I said all this can very rightfully be called as an elaborate conspiracy. Let's not fall to it. It's a parallel economy. It's just that it's a very wasteful kind of economy in which no value is created. Just that millions of people draw their sustenance from this by scaring, rather looting other people.
You have to donate 13 sets of vessels, which the Pandit goes back to the market, sells it off, then it comes back to him.
No, not just that much. You actually have to accept one particular priest as your departed father. There is the concept of Mahabhaman. And you have to gift everything that you would probably want to gift your father. Because your father is supposed to be undertaking a long and arduous journey towards heaven now. And he would need a lot of things. He also needs a vehicle. So this particular priest would come and say, why don't you give me a vehicle? Because I am your father. I am your deceased father standing in front of you. Bed, mattress, clothes, utensils, money. These are small things. Even a vehicle has to be gifted. And you cannot deny. Because that fellow actually behaves as your father. The concept of Jivatma has been economically a very rewarding one. Do you see why it has stood the sands of time? Economics. Very, very fruitful economics. If a concept proves economically rewarding to a particular section, will that concept be ever allowed to die down? So the concept stands. As they say, it's the money, honey. Wherever you find the prevalence of superstition, look sharply, you will also find a parallel economy. No superstition stands on its own. Money is changing hands somewhere. Somebody is filling his pockets, and that's why the superstition keeps breathing. Dirty economics. We talk of black money. This is blackest kind of money. In my corporate life, I was once a consultant to one of the top vehicle manufacturers of our country. And you know, in the small and mid-sized segment, models are especially made to cater to the dowry market. so that you can claim that you gifted this kind of car to your daughter without mentioning the exact model. So the difference between the base model and the highest one can even run into 2x. I'm talking of 2004-5. The base model could be priced at 4. The top model could be priced at 8 or 9. But still you could claim that I have gifted this particular car. Let's say a Santro. At that time. So I inquired and they said it's the dowry thing. Our retailers are trained to ask a customer, वो शादी के लिए चाहिए क्या? The moment you learn that the fellow is buying it for shadi, you know the particular model to direct him to. It's economics. What else is the ego all about? An incompleteness that is bound to be greedy. If I'm incomplete, I'll be greedy. So all superstition is actually just greed. Somebody is benefiting from it. If you read upon this, you'll be surprised. More than 50% of what you call as religious tourism is actually just superstition tourism. People traveling to ward off bad, evil influences. People rushing to some great temple because they believe that they have been possessed. And if they go to that particular place, then the Baba there will shoo away the ghost possessing your head. And all that is accounted for as religious tourism. That is not religious tourism.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.